Hello and welcome to Carnegie. My name is Ludwig Svensson. I'm an equity analyst here at the bank. With me today I have Ellen Donnelly from Abliva. Welcome, Ellen.
Hi, Ludwig. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, great to have you here. So you're going to talk about the interim analysis and just a short introduction to the company. So go ahead and start.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ludwig. So as a reminder, Abliva is focused on developing a portfolio of first-in-class assets that target the underlying pathology of the disease. So we're trying to go to the heart of the disorder of primary mitochondrial disease. We currently have two programs in our portfolio. KL1333, the lead asset, is the one we're going to talk about today. That's focused on adults with primary mitochondrial disease who have fatigue and myopathy. The second program, NV354, is targeting children with neurological components of the disorder. So I think it's important to start talking about the patients because many people haven't met a patient that has primary mitochondrial disorder. And so it's important to start there. So this is a devastating rare disease with serious complications and often a reduced lifespan. The mitochondria are in every cell in your body. So you can imagine if your mitochondria are dysfunctional, that causes major issues throughout your entire system. So we say that we have multisystemic complications. What does that mean? We see patients that have deafness. They may have cognitive disorders. They might have diabetes and other serious things, cardiac problems, respiratory issues. But it's interesting when you talk to the patients, the thing that they complain about the most is the things that affect their daily life. So the things that keep them from going to the grocery store, keep them from holding a job. And those are this overwhelming fatigue and an overwhelming issue with myopathy. So a hard time with the muscles, sitting up, standing down, getting into a car, holding your eyes open, and even talking become an issue. So real high unmet medical need here. There are actually no approved therapies for this indication. And so we are the first to market. So we are the most advanced company out there developing drugs for this patient population. It's a rare disease, but it's not a rare disease. So we have a very large prevalence across the US and Europe. We expect that it's about 100,000 patients. Diagnosis is waning because the patients don't have any reason to get diagnosed. I have no therapies to help me. So they'll often get diagnosed, but we think that that rate is pretty low. If we are the first to market entrant in this population, we could take over 50 to 70% of this population and bring medicines to that large population of patients. If you price it as a rare disease, drug is usually priced about $300,000 in the US and about half that in Europe. You are looking at peak sales in this area of $1 to $4 billion. So a huge commercial opportunity. And again, we're the lead program out there for patients with mitochondrial DNA mutation disease. So what are we doing right now? We are running the pivotal study that's required to take this program to the market. And that's been agreed with the FDA. So we're obviously anxious to get this study run as quickly as possible, but we've also done some things to de-risk the study and make it more likely that it will read out positive. So a couple of the things that we've done are we have two endpoints. It's called an alternate independent endpoints. They're fatigue and myopathy. If either hits, we have the opportunity for a positive study and to take it out to the market. So we call it two shots on goal. We also have a long study. This study is 48 weeks, and it was designed that way intentionally because we think that mitochondrial biogenesis takes some time, and we think that it will take some time to see the impact of our drug on these two symptoms. And so we want to make sure we give it the time. Most of the other studies run have been 24 weeks, and they've not been successful. So we're happy we decided to try this over a year of dosing. We also have a period called a screening period before the study. This is a up to 3-month period where we make sure we have the right patients in the study. During that period, we make sure that they have the moderate to severe levels of fatigue and myopathy, and we also make sure they have the right genetic background. That's been super important to our success. And so we're excited about this. We also have a flexible dosing paradigm in the study. So a patient will be dosed up to a certain dose. And if they can't tolerate that dose, they get to come down. And then if they're feeling better, they can go back up and dose. So it allows us to keep these rare disease patients in our study and make sure that they're comfortable during the duration. The thing that we're here to talk about today is the interim analysis. So this was another thing that we added to the study to make sure that we had de-risked it as much as possible. And so we did that in the middle of July. We read out the independent analysis. I want to just highlight that we remain blinded in an interim analysis. We don't see any data. We just get a recommendation from an external committee. And the external committee came to us, and we were very excited with their feedback. They said that both endpoints had passed futility. That means that both of them have the power to be successful at the end of the 48-week study. We also increased the power by increasing the size. So that was good to us because now we've based the power on our own patients and our patient data versus assessing it based on other comparable studies, which is what you have to do at the beginning of the study. We've also confirmed the safety profile of this drug, and that is extremely important because obviously these patients will be taking this drug for the rest of their life. Before this, we'd only dosed patients for 10 days. We've now dosed them for 24 weeks, and we know that we have no drug-related SAEs over the duration of any dosing of patients or healthy volunteers. So that's a really big win for the program. We also confirmed our dosing strategy worked. And I think most importantly, we confirmed that we can do this. We can run this study. We can find these patients. They're there, and they really want to come into clinical studies. That alone is quite important in a rare disease space. It's often hard to find the patients and hard to convince them to recruit in studies. We've done that really successfully, being on time with this entire study. So our work isn't done. This IA was a reason for success and celebration, but we have a lot to do to get this drug to marketing authorization and an NDA submission by the end of 2027. So right now, we're obviously talking to investors, strategic partners about coming into this exciting story. We're also working on the confirmatory evidence package that's required to take this to NDA submission. We're working on making more drug. So we've identified the commercial partners that will commercialize this drug for us, and they're doing their work. We've agreed on the non-clinical package, and we're starting to think about launching this medicine. So it's an exciting time for the company, and we're thrilled to be here today. So thanks, Ludwig, for taking the time to speak with me.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, for a great presentation of the company. So I was thinking that we could focus on the interim analysis here. And you're aiming to include 180 patients in the trial. Can you tell me what were the key drivers behind this sample size?
Yeah. That's a great question. So obviously, when you're running a study in the rare diseases, you have to kind of walk a fine line between including enough patients so that you can test your mechanism and test the power and get statistical significance. Yet at the same time, you don't want to include too many because then it's going to be hard to run the study because these are rare patients. So the way that this is done in this study is at the beginning of the study, we had to make some assumptions based on data that was already out there because we didn't have our own data. We were coming into our first phase 2 study. And so you make assumptions on the power of the study based on information you know from relevant studies. In this case, we found a study that had a similar PRO endpoint for fatigue, and then we found another study that had used 30 seconds to stand. It's not your own data, though. So you make assumptions on that data, Ludwig. And the nice thing about doing an IA is then you can use your own data, test those assumptions, and see what needs to happen. And so that was the reason for the 180. The assumptions that we had taken or made from these comparable studies didn't really reflect the population of patients that we have now. And so the nice thing is if you don't run an interim analysis, you never do that. And you would continue to power your study based on data that isn't yours. So we're really excited to now have this number. 180 is pretty comparable to the other rare disease studies that have run in PMD. And we think it's going to be fairly easy to recruit given our experience with Wave 1.
Absolutely. And speaking of the recruitment pace, how many clinics do you plan to include in the study in total? And what recruitment pace do you expect to see? Do you expect to see the same pace as before or faster, or what's your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Wave 1 was recruited in 6 countries in 18 clinical sites. And it was pretty impressive because all 18 clinical sites recruited patients, which isn't often done. You can just see the enthusiasm, I think, from the community of this study. As we size up the study to 180 patients, we will expand the site footprint. So we expect to have about 10 countries involved in the study, about 40 sites, increasing our sites in the US, obviously, as that's important with the FDA approval. But we think that the study recruitment will happen at the same pace that it did in Wave 1, given these new sites. So we expect a similar recruitment pace. That said, we've learned a lot, and I think we have a lot of lessons learned that we've discussed with the sites to make it go faster. And also the competitive landscape, we're the lead program, and there aren't any studies out there right now that we're currently competing for patients with. And that was not the case earlier when we started the Wave 1. So I think our recruitment actually could be a bit quicker in this second wave of the study.
Right, yeah, that makes sense. And can you share any information about the drop-off rate in the study so far? And do you know the reasons behind this, that the patients are dropping off?
Yeah, so we did a significant analysis of that at the IA. Again, most of the interim analysis is based on safety because we want to make sure that the drug is safe for patients. It's interesting, the dropout rate, I think when we looked at the 24-week data, we had 35 patients included in that sample set. So we had lost about five. And for a variety of different reasons. So, travel's often an issue. Somebody had a planned surgery that didn't come up earlier. So I think it confirms the tolerability profile and the safety profile of the drug, because that wasn't the reason that they were dropping out.
Right. And you touched on this briefly, but the competitive landscape within mitochondrial diseases, what's your thoughts about that? There have been some programs failing lately, and obviously now you are at the forefront, I guess.
We are. We've got a lot of attention focused on us now because we are the lead program in this area with mitochondrial DNA mutations. So I don't think I mentioned it at the beginning, but patients with PMD can either have PMD due to the mitochondrial DNA mutations or nuclear. Mitochondrial DNA mutations make up about 80% of the population, and we are the lead program in that area. There's another program that's looking at the other 20%, that's stealth, and they're addressing the patients that have nuclear DNA mutations, so we would not be competitive with them. And then there are a couple of earlier programs that have drugs that get into the brain and are probably more competitive with our earlier stage program, the NV354 program. But unfortunately, the area has seen a couple of failures. I think the latest was really when Reneo read out negative in December of last year. They were kind of the lead program in the area, and that took a lot of people by surprise. Luckily, we have a very different mechanism. We have a different mechanism of action, different study design. But the amazing thing about the community is that everyone's very supportive and helpful, and we're all kind of in this for the same reason, to make medicines for patients. And the nice thing about this space is that there's room for all of us. So it's a really collaborative, helpful, and engaged community. So we're really pleased to be working with these individuals. All the patients and physicians are just amazing.
Yeah. Great. I was thinking that we could wrap this interview up with the most important milestones going forward. What can investors expect from you, and what do you expect?
Absolutely. I mean, at this point in development, the nice thing is that that's pretty straightforward. So we obviously need to get this study started, the second part of the study, and our target there is to start screening patients by the end of the year. So that'll be an important milestone. Then obviously completing the study will be another good milestone, and then moving towards NDA submission if the study is positive. So those are probably our next three critical milestones.
Right. Great. It was nice to have you here, Ellen. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks so much, Ludwig.
Yeah.